Konnichiwa everybody, welcome back. I've been sort of thinking about doing this video for quite some time, and it's all about the 3DO system. Much forgotten system these days, but at the time it was such a groundbreaking and amazing system. It's such a shame time has now forgot it, really, because it was such a short-lived console. It tends to get lost in the history of time, really, and things moved on so quickly at this point in gaming that it soon become obsolete. But if you were there for those couple of years when it was about, it was absolutely mind-blowing, and for that reason it's quite a special console to me, because I was madly into it at the time. And although the games haven't aged particularly well in the most part these days, at the time, like I say, it was revolutionary, and it was so much of a huge leap from, you know, the 16-bit generation that we were all playing at the time. I can remember people's jaws dropping when they first saw games like Road Rash, which we've got running here. It was just sensational, and this game has aged well. This is still amazing, and the best way to play Road Rash. It's better than the Saturn and the PlayStation versions to me. It's still a stunning game. So, just going to do a bit of an overview of the 3DO, and then run through the games I've got in my collection. So, like I say, the 3DO, it came out in '93, and it was conceived by EA and Trip Hawkins. Unfortunately, it was astronomically expensive when it came out in '93. It was around 700 quid, which, if you Google in today's money, works out to around 1400 quid. So you can perhaps understand why not many people had it. I was just fortunate at the time, you know, I've got no commitments, no bills, you know, I was working, so I was in a fortunate enough position to be able to afford one. But I can understand why many people didn't at the time. I wouldn't be able to afford £1,400 now to buy one. But anyway, it was released in, like I say, October the 4th, '93. I've got it written down here. In North America, which is when I first got one. It wasn't quite October. I think it was quite close to Christmas when I got one. Possibly December time, I think. Then it came out in Japan on March the 20th, '94. So sort of 5 months later. And then we didn't get it in Europe until June the 11th, '94. So 9 months or so later than the North American release. But then by sort of '96, it was all over. You know, the PlayStation and Saturn had, you know, moved things on quite a lot more, and it became obsolete very quickly, and then subsequently more or less forgot about, really. There was a rumoured follow-up to the 3DO system called the M2, but it never materialised. I think it was supposed to be an add-on initially for the 3DO to make it more powerful, and then it was going to be a standalone system. But whatever, I think there were business problems and funding or something, I don't know. Anyway, the technology, according to Wikipedia, ended up getting sold to Matsushita, and I'm sure I've read somewhere it ended up in Japanese vending machines, the technology, but it never saw the light of day as a game console anyway. Now, there were quite a few different variants of the 3DO console. The first one being the Panasonic 3DO FZ1, which is the most common system. It was the first one to come out, and the first, you know, the one I had to start with. But then that was in '93, and then in '94 there was a Gold Star version that was released, and then in '95 there was a Sanyo console released. Much like there's different variants of the Saturn, where you can get the High Saturn and the V Saturn. The the same principle. It was the same console, just made by different manufacturers. In this case, Panasonic, Goldstar and Sanyo. As I say, that's the Panasonic system, and I still think it's one of the nicest looking systems ever made. It's just a great looking system, the Panasonic 3DO. I think it still looks nice now. And at the time, it was a great system, but unfortunately the controller was limited because, for some bizarre reason, the directional D-pad controller, the diagonals didn't work particularly well. So if you were playing a game that required a diagonal press on the controller, which there weren't that many to be fair, but there were some, it was almighty annoying because the controller was quite ineffective at receiving the diagonal commands. So principally that's why I then swapped mine for a Goldstar model, because that controller worked properly on the diagonals. So that's the original Panasonic controller. As you can see, it's a 3-button controller with 2 shoulder buttons and the D-pad, and then you basically got start select. It's a lovely controller. Unfortunately, like I say, the diagonals are really not very responsive. So I then swapped to a Goldstar system. Like I say, I haven't got one of those anymore, but I have still got a controller. Now it's not such a nice controller to hold, to look at, but the direction, the diagonals work great. So for that reason, this is a superior pad, and hence why I've, bought a pad subsequently. I'll put a picture up of the Goldstar machine so you can see what it looks like. It looks quite visually, it's quite different. Nowhere near as nice in my opinion. And then again, I'll put a picture up of the Sanyo console, which I've never had. And again, that looks quite different, but in my opinion, not as good as the Panasonic. Not much between the Goldstar and the Sanyo in my opinion. But then a bit further down the line, Panasonic then launched their own updated console called the FZ10, which is this one, which is much more of a slimline console, and I suppose quite reminiscent of the PC Engine Duo, really. And it's a very similar size to the Duo, and you can see you had fairly basic connections back in the day. You had composite and S-Video, but at the time that was S-Video was a good connection. And where the FZ1 is a motorised CD tray, this is just a flip lid like the Mega CD2. But then they also updated the controller and made it smaller. Not sure if it was of any benefit, to be honest, but it was a bit different anyway. And then one of the greatest games on the system was Street Fighter 2, which was where the diagonal direction on the original pad was a problem. But you could get around that by buying the Capcom specific 3DO Soldier Pad. I think you can get these for the Super Nintendo now as well. Well, they subsequently came out for the Super Nintendo, I think. But these were purposely made for Street Fighter, and these were fantastic controllers. Moulded to the shape of the hand, and then, you've got the 6 buttons, obviously, for Street Fighter. Really nice pad. Quite an obscurity these days. But if you're into Street Fighter on the SNES, for instance, you might want to look into getting one of them, maybe. Right, so, as I say, we were talking 1993 here, and we were all playing on the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, which are amazing consoles. And time has been much kinder to those than the 3DO. you know, I'd much rather play a Super Nintendo or a Mega Drive game now than I would most 3DO games. But at the time, you know, I was young, I was banging to the latest technology, and this seemed so revolutionary and so much the future now. It was incredible. 3D gaming, like nothing you'd ever seen on the Mega Drive or Super Nintendo. And not too long after release, we had Road Rash, and it was just stunning, and it remains stunning to this day. But there were so many others. Most games were 3D, because that seemed to be the future at the time. And in this period of time, there was a lot of FMV games, again, which people thought were the future, obviously. And at the time, they were kind of different and unusual and exciting. But with hindsight, now they look really poor, and there's very little gameplay. But that was just how it was at the time. You know, it was all new and exciting, and it seemed to be the way forward. And 2D seemed like old hat, and are you playing 2D games? Why aren't you playing 3D games? And that was just how it was. So I think we'll just run through a few of the games now. I will just say, 3DO system in general is 95% region free. So any games from any region will play in any console, but there are a few exceptions that are region locked. But nothing too much to worry about. I have got a couple of them, and I'll just point it out as we go through them. The one thing I would say is both my systems are American, and it's by far, I know I bang on about this, you know, I don't buy PAL stuff because of the inferiority of the slow speed and bordered pictures on older consoles, but it seems even worse on the 3DO. The PAL 3DO has got horrendous borders, top, bottom and sides on some games, which makes the Japanese or American console far superior to the PAL. So if you're going to go down the road of a 3DO, if that kind of thing, you know, is of interest to you, I'd strongly recommend an imported console over a PAL one, because like I say, 95% of the PAL games will work on it, so you haven't got to worry about that. Right. Well, this is one of the ones that is region locked, Way of the Warrior, which is it's like kind of 3DO version of Mortal Kombat. I mean, it's not aged particularly well, but it's your kind of gore-fest 2D fighter. At the time it was quite fun and exciting, but it looks a bit choppy now, to be fair. But like I say, that is region locked, so whatever region system you've got to have the same region game. That's a repro box, by the way, I've only got that disc on. And then this is the only other repro box I've got. We've got Corpse Killer. Now this is another one of these FMV shooting type games. It's a light gun game. I suppose it's a horror light gun game really, but with grainy FMV graphics. Obviously we'd had the Mega CD by this point when this came out. So if you played on that, you're aware of the FMV style games of this time. The 3DO kind of expanded on the Mega CD in that regard, where they were very similar FMV games, but the quality of the FMV and the size of the FMV screen was much bigger and better on the 3DO than it was on the Mega CD. But it was still sort of CD gaming technology in its infancy really. Then there's lots of different boxes and style boxes for 3DO games. My favourite personally is the long box, which predominantly are American boxes. And this style in particular, there's all different styles of long boxes, but this style in particular with the plastic clasp is my favourite. This is Sewer Shark, obviously, also on the Mega CD, but again, much better quality FMV and screen size, you know, of the actual play screen than it is on the Mega CD. although it's terrible, I've got quite a fondness for Sewer Shark. It's a good game. Then this is another one that was just stunning back in the day, because this was famous on the Mega Drive. But when the 3DO version of John Madden Football came out, it just looked incredible. You know, compared with what you'd played on the Mega Drive, this was such a leap forward. It was just mind-blowing, honestly. It really felt you were like you were playing something, from the future, really. And that one comes with manuals, playbooks, and the CD. Really stunning looking game. We might as well go through all the long box games I've got. This was obviously, a big sort of talking point at the time. Very famous game, Night Trap. And again, much like Sewer Shark, expanded and better quality on the 3DO. Now, this was one of my favourites at the time, the Horde. Now this is just purely cardboard long box. Unfortunately, they're not very strong, and the quality over the years is not brilliant, but it's nice to have anyway. At least it's nice box art. But this is more of an old-fashioned sort of sprite-based game mixed with FMV. But the game itself is the sprite-based sort of, it's like an adventure farming type game where you've got to defend your village from the evil horde eating all your crops. Really loved it at the time. You can get that on the Saturn. Then we've got another different style long box. This is like a cardboard opening, but it's stiff, hard cardboard. We've got Demolition Man. There's a lot of FMV in this, and it's been years since I played it. I think there are different sections. I think there's fighting, shooting, and driving sections. Again, at the time, this was really quite good. One I enjoyed. As with a lot of these, at the time they were great, but you play them now and they're maybe not so good. It's great for the nostalgia. And this is my last long box game. We've got Hell, and this is another different style. We've got a top and bottom lid and a CD case inside with a manual. I can't remember much about this. I think it says a cyberpunk thriller, and there's real actors in it. I think it's like a D-style video adventure. Can't remember. Got a 17.8 rating. I'm guessing it's a horror thriller type video game. Right, now we've got the aforementioned Road Rash. Now this is the Japanese version. Again, like I say, plays absolutely fine. The difference with the Japanese games is they're in CD cases, so in many ways better. But yeah, plays absolutely perfectly, and personally, it's the best game on the system for me. Just as a comparison, now that's an English copy of Road Rash. Now a lot of English games tend to come in double CD cases, but again, plays on anything. Now another one that's aged really well, we've got Wolfenstein 3D. This should be in a long box originally. It's one of the CD case inside a long box is the original release. Unfortunately, I've only got the CD case. Not into first person, games like this. But Wolfenstein is one I can play. Probably the first game of this type I ever played. Pretty much the only one. I do like this, and it's a brilliant version on the 3DO. Then we've got Petanque, which is basically 3D pinball. At the time, it was, basically you control the ball and you're flying around the pinball table in real 3D. It was alright at the time. Again, it's a bit quirky now, I suppose. Another classic from back in the day, we've got Alone in the Dark. Again, this should have come in a long box originally, but one of those flimsy cardboards that got destroyed. So I've just got the small CD case version. This was, I'm sure this is the American version. Pretty sure, yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Now I put hours into this back in the day. Pebble Beach Golf. Absolutely loved it. Obviously, there's lots of variants of these T&E soft golf games with different courses, but this was the first one to come out on the 3DO, and absolutely hammered this. Brilliant game. So great to have a round on that every now and again. Now we've got one. This is what. This one's disc only, and it's just in a non-genuine case. This is a US only game, Family Feud, which is Family Fortunes basically. I mean, not much to say about that, it's Family Fortunes. Then we've got another T&E soft, Wiley Country Club, is it? Yeah. Exactly the same as Pebble Beach, just a different course. A great conversion on the 3DO at the time this was, Samurai Showdown. Obviously it's not as good as the Neo Geo, but at the time it was a stellar conversion and still plays a good game of Samurai Showdown. That's the Japanese version. Again, it plays no problem. I think the only other one off the top of my, aside from Way of the Warrior, the only other ones I can think of which are region locked, there's a game called Shadow, which is American. That's region locked. That's a terrible one-on-one fighter. And there's a game called Guardian War is the American name, and Powers Kingdom is the English name. It's like an RPG game. That's region locked. So if you've got a PAL system, you've got to have the Powers Kingdom. If you've got an American system, you've got to have Guardian War. Loved this at the time. Twisted the game show. A really wacky TV game show with crazy puzzles basically, but it was so revolutionary at the time. Absolutely loved it. And again, they've aged terribly, but it's great to have a blast on just for the nostalgia. That's another PAL version obviously in that style box. And we've got a brilliant on-rail shooter, Starblade, a great version on the 3DO. I'm sure you've played Starblade. Fantastic polygon based 3D space light gun shooter. Absolutely brilliant. One of my all-time favourites at the time, Dragon's Lair. There's a beautiful long box version of this, the American version, which is the one I used to have. It's a shame I haven't got that now. This will have to do. This is just the PAL version. You've obviously played Dragon's Lair. There's not much gameplay, it's an interactive cartoon basically, but at the time it felt amazing. Then we've got Gex, which is a 2D platformer. I suppose it was a bit of a mascot for the 3DO at the time. Their version of Sonic, if you like. Still decent. I never really liked it back in the day, to be honest. That's actually the packing title with my FZ1. Sorry, FZ10. Now, one of only 2 copies of FIFA I've got in my collection. This one and the first Mega Drive game being the other one. Again, much like John Madden, this was incredible when this came out because it felt like a proper football, 3D proper football match compared with the Mega Drive version. It was just incredible. It's hard to explain what a leap forward it felt at the time. I mean, I've never played it now, but now this was the original packing title with the original American 3DO system, which I had first. Crash and Burn. Just came in a slipcase, as I remember. I don't think it came in a box. This is the Japanese version. It's quite tricky to find this now as a standalone game. Hence why I bought the Japanese version. But this was it's like a 3D sort of futuristic racing game where you can shoot other opponents with like guns that are fixed to your car. It looked sensational at the time. Obviously, again, it's another one that hasn't aged particularly well, but it shows what might have been really, because there were very few racing games on the 3DO. Because a lot of games were like FMV based. It's a shame really. I think there was potential here. It's still quite interesting to play this. That's one of the ones I would turn on every now and again. Then we've got Return Fire. Now this is a really good sort of capture the flag type military game. Not the kind of thing I'd generally play, but for some reason this was really good, and I think this has aged reasonably well, to be honest. Then we've got a 3D space shooter. We've got Total Eclipse, which is basically, I suppose you'd kind of call it the 3DO version of Star Fox, really. It was nothing sensational, but it looked, it did look quite nice. But again, it's one of these that hasn't aged particularly well, but it was quite revolutionary at the time, I suppose. Then we've got the Japanese version of Need for Speed, which is called Overdriving, as you can see. Now this is another game in the Road Rash class. Absolutely brilliant. By far and away the best Need for Speed game ever made for me. It's totally not like any other Need for Speed game, in that it's much more realistic. It's more of a sort of a arcadey simulation style game. I mean, there's not much content here really. You've got about 8 cars and 3 tracks, and you're basically just racing against an opponent on each track. But it's just got a huge nostalgia value to me. At the time, like I say, you'd been playing racing games on a Mega Drive, and then you suddenly saw that, and it was like, wow, what's going on here? This looks just like, it felt like you were playing an arcade game. It was just so good, and it'll always be special to me for that reason. It's just incredible. I think, actually, yeah, there's we've got the PAL version of that as well. Again, my original one was the US long box version, which is a shame I haven't got that now, but nevertheless, Need for Speed, I think we'll swap that. We'll put Need for Speed on so you can have a look at Need for Speed. Now, this is another cracking sort of on rails light gun style shooter. It's now light gun, obviously. I don't know if that's why I've got two. I don't know if that one works. Yeah, this is another brilliant light gun on rail shooter without a light gun, but it works really well. Burning Soldier, cracking sort of set in space, and you just shooting stuff down as the video moves along. Really good. I'll say there's no light gun. You can get a light gun for the 3DO, but it's like hen's teeth these days. because you can get, there's lots of the American laser games on the 3DO. I particularly liked Mad Dog 2 on the 3DO. Just sensational, great version. Unfortunately I haven't got that anymore, but Mad Dog 1 and 2 would be two I would quite like to add in the future. So they're terrible, but that's how terrible they're good, all the American laser games. Right, next up we've got D, which is another one of these sort of horror adventure style video type games. Again, that came out on the Saturn and it's on the PlayStation, certainly on the Saturn at a later date. Then we've got Striker, which, you know, is football, not much to say really. Then, speaking of a lack of racing games on the 3DO, outside of Need for Speed and Road Rash, there's not a great deal. Crash and Burn is probably the next best one. We've also got Mega Race, which I did put a bit of time into at the time, but realistically it's pretty terrible. It's all kind of FMV based and it's not a great game. Things have moved on a lot since Mega Race. Now here we've got Battle Sport. I can't remember what this is like. No, it looks a bit like 3D kind of speedball. I've really no idea. No, can't remember a thing about that one. Now this is quite good. And this has aged well. This is Captain Quasar. This is kind of a it's an isometric. I think it's like pixel based. This is kind of like a FIFA viewpoint on the Mega Drive, but it's kind of a dungeon crawler reeler. Really quite a good game, this Captain Quasar. Unfortunately I don't think that one's particularly easy to find anymore. And we've got Jurassic Park Interactive. This is much like Demolition Man. You've got different sort of sections, driving, shooting. We're basically shooting dinosaurs. Obviously the video quality hasn't aged particularly well, but it was quite decent at the time and still not too bad, to be fair. Then we've got another one of these T&E soft golf games. This one's Wicked 18, I think it's called. Yeah, it's Wicked 18. It's like Crazy Golf basically. Wacky courses. They're all much of a muchness, but they're all good. And then we've got Escape from Monster Manor. Now this is the Japanese one. This is another sort of first-person Wolfenstein Doom type game, set in a sort of haunted house, if you like, with ghosts. Really quite good, but there was no like roof or floor. It was just walls, so people moaned about that at the time. But again, like I said, I don't play these, but along with Wolfenstein, this is one of the only few that I ever have played and liked. And the Jap cover's quite a lot nicer than the other ones. Actually, it looks proper like a horror game, doesn't it? And then we've got two left. The all-time classic, Another World. Again, the Japanese box art's really quite nice. I've never been crazy about Another World, to be honest, but it's a good version. And then some might argue the best game on the 3DO is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. It's certainly a sensational version. Great game. I mean, I don't think Street Fighter ever got any better than this, to be honest. It could be the best game on the 3DO. It's certainly this, Road Rash and Need for Speed. They are the three stellar games you want to be checking out on the 3DO if you're interested in picking one up yourself, or if you've already got one maybe. But there we go. That's my rundown on my thoughts on the 3DO. It was a great system. Much forgotten now, sadly, but I can understand why people looking at it fresh in this day and age might think, what the hell were people thinking buying these kind of games, because a lot of them have aged badly. But it's still a good, fun, nostalgic system to me, and there are still some great games to be found on it, even, you know, to play today. Let me know, what do you think? Who's got any thoughts on the 3DO? Did anybody have one? Be nice to hear what your experience with the 3DO is. Let me know. Thanks for watching anyway. I hope you found that kind of informative. Probably not many people are going to watch this, being as it's about 3DOs. It might only be half a dozen people, but it'd be nice to hear off you, whoever does watch it. But thanks for watching anyway, and I'll see you soon. Sayonara.